Just a little bit of background on what we're going to see tonight. About 2 years ago, I began to feel like what we have here on Kauai with albatross living on the island is so rare. No species of albatross lives any place in the world where people live, except here on Kauai, in yards, on property that's accessible, at the Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuge. We're the only place. So not only do we have a profound obligation to them, but we also have a great joy in them. And how can we share that with the world? So I began looking for means of live streaming albatross to the world, and had lots of false starts. A place that does that, we have to have, of course, private property permission. We have to have the bandwidth in that area, which is a big deal on Kauai. We have to have a power source. We have to have a place that's relatively safe for the camera and the bird. We have to have lots of things to make it work out. So after several false starts, we located a property. The property owners were open to it, in fact welcomed it. Cornell Laboratory, there's an annual report back there for those of you who want to see it. Cornell Lab of Ornithology in New York, the world's premier ornithology organization, bird organization. We're eager to do this in cooperation with us, if only we had all those things. And of course funding, right? So there's some $20,000 or so had to be raised for equipment and travel costs and things to get it going. So the folks that are among the Kauai Albatross Network made significant contributions in time and money and resources in all sorts of ways. And then, of course, what has to happen is what? We have to have a chick. We have to have an egg hatch. We have to have an egg laid in the right place. We have to have the egg not abandoned. We have to have the egg fertile. And we have to have it hatch. All of those things are not guaranteed, right? So every single one of those things happened. We predicted the day it would hatch because Janine and I found the egg one day, and said we didn't know, sometime in 2 or 3 days time frame when it had been laid. But we predicted the day of hatch, and the very day, January 27th, the camera went live, the chick hatched. Oh, wow. So, and then from then on, I get chicken skin every time I think about it. So from January 27th, all the way till she fledged, was live streamed to the world, almost 2 million hits from 195 countries. Amazing, huh? For the world to fall in love with albatross, as we have, who have seen them in person, but from people all over the world who've never had an opportunity to see an albatross life like this. And all of us who even do know albatross learned a lot. Like, for example, who knew that a baby albatross was going to make friends with a baby rooster? Who knew that, right? You'll see it all in the film. So what we have here is a condensation of 5 months of films down to about 40 minutes. We're going to be watching that videotape, and then there's going to be time for conversation and questions after that. So let's just go through the whole thing and get a chance to take a peek at the life of Kaloakulua. She was named by Sabra Kauka, who some of you know as a teacher at Island School and a Hawaiian arts practitioner, named her after the phase of the moon in which she hatched, Kaloakulua, right, when she started pipping. Her parents, Kaloahine and Kaloakane, are named after the district where they chose to nest. And this was their second time nesting. The first time that they nested, their egg failed to hatch. They were very true to their egg. They stayed with it about 2 weeks after it was supposed to hatch. And then I filmed them having a conversation about whether to quit or not. And they walked away, came back, walked away, came back, walked away, came back, and finally gave up. And of course they didn't hatch. So this was their second attempt. And often, as with parents the second time around, it's a little more graceful. It's a little more skilled. So they learned, they knew when to replace each other on the egg, and they were extremely good parents. From the minute Kaloakulua hatched, as you'll see, she was full of personality. So we'll see lots more about Kaloakulua here. And if any questions before we begin? Okay, let's start the show.
we use UV-resistant cable ties to keep it on there. One goes through the band so that it's really secure, and this one goes over just in case the band breaks. And then we'll put marine-grade epoxy like they use on boats just to attach it on, and that works to keep them on. Don't take it off after. Yeah, so the band will be broken off and we'd have a replacement.
It still makes me cry to see them fly. I want to explain a couple of things, and then I want to open it up to questions. I made a list of things to explain to you, but I want to say a couple of things first. One is, I declare you all citizen scientists now. All of you, every single one of you in this room has now observed more about the life of Albatross than almost anyone in the world. So I want you to know that. Congratulations. Thank you so much for sharing. If we are able to launch the camera again this year, which will depend lots on if there's a egg and a chick, then we will, and the funding, we will launch the camera again. And this year, we're also going to have all-night infrared. Oh, wow. And so, we will very much want eyes and ears from all over the world watching. Oh, have I started here? Tech support. Oh, okay, we're starting on, okay, very good. So we'll very much want eyes and ears from all over the world. The dog you saw on the screen, we knew about that dog. It was about 6:15 in the morning. We knew about it because a viewer from Seattle saw it and happened to know Susan Durkin. Wow. And called Susan, and Susan called me, and we made a rush to the place. The dog was trapped and taken to the Humane Society and adopted. We owe a lot to that dog. KK was napping. Did you notice that she was sleeping when the dog was there? We didn't see it on the screen, but the dog that we named Makakilo had beautiful blue eyes. But the dog we named Makakilo went up and sniffed Kaloakulua on the neck. And we just had horrible dog kills last season. Remember last season? Lots of dogs. So we were losing our circulation over it. But he sniffed her neck and she didn't wake up. That's how little a native Hawaii bird recognizes a predator. If she jerked awake, he probably would have said, oh, that's something to eat. Or at least kill. So anyway, I wanted to tell you those two things in particular, all you citizen scientists. And the CAM operation, the other thing I want to tell you is that once we launched this, I thought, okay, good, that job is done, now on to other things. Well, it turns out that Cornell wanted lots of volunteers to run the camera, so there were lots of folks in this room who were operating that camera. It's basically a 24-hour security camera, high-tech security camera. So we were on, that's why you can see it zooming in and out and following the chick around. It's not like a barn owl camera where the camera is in a nesting box and no one has to watch it because it's in a box the whole time. This is a very adventuresome, exploratory bird, right? And lots of things were going on in that field. So, okay, so I'm going to tell you some things, but only I want to hear your questions first because I want to know what you're interested in knowing from what you've seen. Yes, ma'am.
How did you know she was a female when you...
Good question. Thank you for how did she know? How did we know that was a girl? We didn't want to call her it, but a lot of people will do because we knew it. If you call an animal it, you're 100% wrong. If you call it he, you got a 50% chance of being wrong, right? So we just, we each kind of chose the gender we preferred. So the biologist that you saw doing the banding came and did a tiny blood draw and sent it off for DNA testing. And then 2 weeks later, it's a girl. So that's how we found out. Good question. Good question. We normally don't know. Oh, and by the way we do know ultimately about the genders of chicks is when they're banded, a feather is pulled. Just a tiny piece of feather or two is pulled. And then if there's money and the wherewithal and a good, credible lab to do it, those feathers will tell us what gender. So the t-shirts that you see for sale in the back, the proceeds of these t-shirt sales go toward paying for that this season. So one shirt, one bird. That's about what it costs. Okay, other questions? Ideas, thoughts? Yes?
I was surprised that the younger albatross visit, and they were still on the island. Were they?
Okay. She was surprised that the younger albatross were still on the island throughout the time. There's a sort of a peak season. They do arrive, they're here now. There are many younger albatross here now. There's sort of peak season, February, March, you see a whole bunch of them. Dozens and hundreds of them. In fact, this year it looks like it's going to be a bumper year for albatross on the private rural lands. I don't know what the count is in Princeville yet, but it sounds like it's pretty good here too. So they'll stay, and then gradually as the season goes on, you see fewer and fewer of them. But I did want to mention something about those younger albatross. Most of the adults that you saw with Kaloakulua were not her parents. right? And did you see her do this cowering thing? She's supposed to learn to be passive with them. She's supposed to learn that they are her superiors in the pecking order, right? And so she does, once she learned to do this, then they wouldn't jump on her. I mean, they didn't really jump on her anyway, but some of them would come up and just sort of tease her and peck at her. And so once she did this, until you saw toward the end as she was getting stronger and braver, then she held her own with them, right? And actually, Mango's parents, one of Mango's parents at least, would come over and grab her by the head and shake her. And they do that. Her parents probably went over and did that to Mango too, to basically say, I cannot feed more than one chick. It's like you saying, I can only afford one child, right? That's all I can handle, right? Emotionally, spiritually, financially, whatever it is, that's all you can take. Yes? When do they turn? Well, they're called subadults. I don't know exactly. Does anybody know, Tom? Do you know the answer to that?
About 3 or 4 years. Wants to come back about 3 years.
And that's when well, we're still calling them subadults then, though, right? When do we switch from subadults to adults? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, 8 or 9. They don't start nesting till they're 8 or 9. Yeah. So when they first start coming back, we won't see her for 3 or 4 years, right? So when she comes back, we'll get that band and find out where she's been. But then she'll start flirting, and we have bets that she's going to be flirting with Mango. Because they grew up seeing each other, they fought together. You saw all that turf stuff, right, that went on between them. They don't want any parent to be confused about who to feed, right? So they're going, not, and Mango said, my mound. That's my mound. And at the end, she said, that's my runway. My runway. She's a week older. She's a week older, so she fledged first. So we will see subadults or adults around once they're 3 or 4 years old, and then they'll keep coming back. They'll often cruise all the rural lands and the private lands, as well as Kilauea Point. They'll cruise them and kind of go to the singles bars and see where it's hot. Okay? Many of them will nest where they grew up, but if you think about it, it can't be true for all of them, because they will choose a mate who may have grown up on another piece of property, or even another island. So somebody has to compromise. What?
Or Mexico.
Or Mexico. We have a Mexican dancer here in private lands, right? We have a bird from Mexico. We have a bird from Oahu. I've seen several dancers from Oahu. Yes?
If all
Krista.
your variables come together
Yeah.
and the camera happens,
Yes.
will you be needing volunteers?
If all of the variables come together and we launch the camera, will we be needing volunteers? Yes, primarily we'll be needing volunteers to do what I mentioned before, which is watch. And the good part about this kind of volunteer work, you don't have to book a time. You can do it when you wake up at 2 in the morning. You can do it at 3 in the afternoon. You can just do it for fun. But if you feel like writing down observations or notifying anybody when you see something that you think is confusing, or certainly if there's a predator on the scene, that's helpful to us. Camera operators takes much more of a commitment. Training, tweeting, Facebook posts, you know, all that, because there are all kinds of people on Twitter saying, what was that? What's going on? What's going on? So data collection, it's a multitasking kind of focused thing. But somebody with your skills, are you kidding me? Absolutely. Somebody, if you feel like that appeals to you, talk to us about it, and we'll tell you more about what it takes. You're basically a Cornell volunteer at that point.
Question.
Yes.
How do you distinguish between the juveniles and the adults? I saw that over and over,
Good.
identifying as juvenile, but
Good.
I can't see a difference.
You're correct. She wants to know how you can identify between a juvenile and an adult. You can't. You all know about Wisdom, the 63, she must be 64 now, she was 63 last year. The 63-year-old oldest wild bird in the world is a Laysan Albatross. She's back reunited with her mate at Midway. She's raised 7 chicks in a row, and I haven't heard if she's laid an egg this year or not. But she just raised another chick last year. Put her side by side with a 2-year-old and you cannot tell the difference. Not even microscopically.
When and how were the parents banned?
The parents get banned, well, all the birds get banded when banding happens on the island. So some of them they get sporadically banded when they're at Kilauea Point because there are biologists there. On the private lands, it depends on who has the license and the skill to do that job. So we now have, the state, Kauai has a seabird biologist now. So whenever she goes out, she can do that. But you know, it depends on when you see the banded birds. You have to sort of show up there, and you have to have the bands with you, and you have to have the permit to do it and all that. So, Nikki. Oh.
Yes, because
Oh,
I
okay.
saw the mother.
We have record, yeah, all the bands, you saw there's a plastic band on one leg and then a metal band on the other, so you can take those numbers and send them into a federal banding laboratory and they'll tell you what was recorded about them. So both of KK's parents were banded as adults somewhere around 9 or 10 years before. So we don't know if they nested on another property before this, but we know that their attempts, they are on an egg now. They returned to the property, except they nested 2 feet from a propane tank with no view. So it's great for the chick where it is. It's a nice flat area with shade and the birds like that. But for many of the viewers told us it was therapeutic for them to see Kauai. To sit there and listen to the birds singing when it was snowing and in horrible weather. Ice cold, horrible weather, and sit there and look at that beauty and see the birds. So anyway, they were banded some time ago. This is their 3rd nest. We don't know for sure how old they are. I don't think anybody can tell with feathers either. Can they? Just gender. Because the feathers replenish, that's right. Of course. Yes, sir.
We've heard a number of vocalizations from these birds. It's quite amazing, isn't it?
It is,
A lot
yeah.
of different things they're doing. It seems like this study would give you the opportunity to try to link the sounds with
Yes.
what they're doing. Have
Yeah.
you done that, or somebody else developed the vocabulary so we can really think about
To think, yeah, so his question is, what are they saying to each other, right? And so, yes, there have been people who have recorded that. There was a scientist from the Cornell Laboratory that's associated with the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology that recorded a bunch of sounds when he was here. Much of it is on record. There are articles printed about what it means when they go eek, eek, and what it means when they go eek, 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 and what it means when they go eek, 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 eek. And once you listen to them for a while, you can certainly tell a tone, whether it's aggressive, whether it's affectionate. You can, when you hear, you know, that's the chick begging to be fed. But I think it'd be wonderful to learn all. So you saw, for example, that the clip where there were 4 subadults sitting around, or 4 teenagers hanging around with her, right? They do that. I mean, you can see in an open field that's acres and acres, you can see where the teenagers are, or where the chick is, because the teenagers will all be with it. Where they'll all be hanging out with the chick. Sometimes they seem like they're babysitting. Sometimes they seem like they just like to be social. But are they saying the good squid is go 2 hours that way and then shift on the way? Because how do they even find Kauai, right? How do they, you know, the area they forage when they leave here to go find food for their chicks is about 4 million square miles. Now that sounds like a lot, sort of, but let me tell you what that compares to. Do you know the square mileage of the entire United States, including Alaska? 3.8 million. So they are foraging an area the size of the entire United States. And then, I'm getting chicken skin every time, they turn around and find Kauai. Now, and they find their own colony. They find an acre. They find 100 square feet somewhere. So I'm going to ask you, John Harder, if I said to you, John, I want you to find a specific acre in all of North America. You'll have no geographic signs. Could you find it? I couldn't. And some people say, well, they read the stars. Well, but it's lots of cloud cover in the North Pacific. And is it the, what do you call it, the magnetite in their cells? Maybe. Magnetic, probably some of that. We don't know how they get here, but they come back. I've seen birds that won't nest more than just a couple of feet from where they've nested before. I mean, out of 4 million square miles. Yes?
What's the most interesting thing that the Albatross experts, that were already experts, learned from watching these videos, from watching the camp?
What a good question. What's the most interesting thing that Albatross experts learned from watching? So, Tom, you've been around lots of Albatross. What did you learn from watching this? You want to think about it for a minute? You think about it. Kim, what do you think? What did you learn?
I learned a lot.
You learned a lot.
Yeah, just how chick behavior.
Chick behavior.
Well, oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so how really long it took before she would stand up completely?
How long it took for her to stand up.
Mobility.
Yeah. You notice that her attempts to stand up, most of her mobility was walking on her knees, right? The knees bend opposite of ours, so walking on her knees. And it takes hip strength to be able to stand up full upright and balance. So it took months for her to get really be mobile walking that way.
And then
That's true.
The interaction.
The other birds.
Even, you know,
Friends with the rooster.
even the, yeah.
Yeah, friends with George. They preened right side by side a lot. That was I think the thing I learned the most after watching rural colonies for 10 years, like once a week, going there for an hour and writing down bands and all that sort of thing. I thought, oh, I know something about albatross. Well, things change in a minute. Something can happen, and then it's over 2 minutes later. That's what I learned. That you don't really know what's happened in the last 24 hours. If you even come every day and sit there for an hour, you think you know what's happened, but you really don't. Because of all the interactions of the other animals coming around and their relations to each other without human presence. That camera looks...
When you're there,
Right.
it might cause...
Exactly. That's the point. Right, exactly. But human presence may make a big difference in how they behave. This looks like a green blender, and it was hanging there from the moment she hatched. So it was never a thing to her until she saw her reflection in it. And then she started coming up and looking at, that was the close-up. And you know the shot you saw of the red-crested cardinal coming in flying like that? We named that bird Bobby Darin and his mate Sandra D. For reasons I won't go into right now. But Bobby Darin attacked that camera a lot. He saw his reflection in it and he said, dude, you are so too close to my girl. And you are so toast. So he'd come in and he'd peck and he'd fly at it. We were all so entertained. We were tweeting and glipping and things to each other. Ah, Bobby Darin, look what he's doing now. So I think the other animals too was really an interesting part.
Do they have, or is it common for a chick to create its own nest?
Yes. Good, thank you. Is it common for a chick to create its own nest? Very common. Some chicks will stay in the same nest bowl till the last month or so, but a lot of them get adventuresome. I've seen chicks build 5 or 6 nests in there before they fledge. But they're practicing, they're having fun, they're exploratory, they're tactile. They love to pick up things, they pull like puppies on slippers. You know, they go around exploring because their parents are gone for weeks at a time and they're hanging out. So, yes, absolutely. We just knew this chick was going to be exploratory. One of the things you couldn't see behind the palm tree was that Hob had a brilliant idea of building a kind of a rock pile, put piles of rocks behind that, because I didn't want the chick to go behind the palm tree so the viewers couldn't see her. So I thought, well, now that's brilliant, what I'll do. And we also didn't want her going behind all that vegetation, again, so you couldn't see her. So I moved some rocks around and made her a little pile, and and she, when she started wandering out of their nest, I think the first or second time, she climbed right over them. I wasn't gone 15 minutes, and Janine called me and said, I think you have to go back. She just... So we knew she was going to be exploratory, and we do know that inquisitive exploratory birds have a longer lifespan and do better ultimately. So we knew she was going to be a good chick for the camera. Thank heavens. That's another thing you can't count on, right? Okay. Yes?
I have a question about the bolus.
About the bolus, yes, okay.
So did the parent give it to the chick, and did the chick actually take it in and regurgitate it, or was it from the parent and it didn't?
Yes, everything the chick has in its stomach, with the exception of some of the ironwood needles it had, or grass it had eaten, swallowed, everything has been regurgitated from the parent. So the parent picked up those pieces of plastic and regurgitated it to the chick. The adult birds can survive the plastic pretty well because they're sort of programmed to puke out squid beaks and things they can't digest. The chicks may be another story if they get too much of it, right? If they get too much plastic in their stomach and can't get rid of it.
So what we saw then was actually not ingested in the chick?
Not injected?
Ingested by the chick?
It was swallowed, but it was in the stomach and puked out. Well, it could have been, they have a pre-stomach, a pre-ventricular, so it may have been it was probably in there and then it puked it out. But it was fed by the parent. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, I didn't know if the chick actually ingested it and then...
Oh, picked it up itself? You mean like picked up plastic on the lawn?
From the parent.
Not picked it up, but it was puked from the parent.
It came in.
Fed by the parent.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah, it opened its mouth and the, actually the parent opened its mouth and the chick put its bill inside, as you saw, and it just drank what it got. With some solid fish and other things likely.
And then it regurgitated it.
Correct. Then it regurgitated it.
And that was what the picture was.
And that's what was in the picture. And I don't know if you saw it, it happened really quickly, but it included a syringe that had a pink liquid in it. And I don't know if it was blood or chemotherapy or what was in it, but it had something in it that was not a needle, but a syringe, a regular plastic syringe with a plunger. So stuff it had in it. Yes, sir. Hi.
Is there any explanation as to how after the chick fledges, it's been fed its entire life by its parents, and then it takes off and then it feeds itself?
Right. How does it do that? Right. It's one of the great mysteries, isn't it? They have a great sense of smell, and they're really, really drawn to the ocean. You could see them yearning for the ocean as the wind picked up. You saw how it behaved in the rain. She behaved in the rain. Those chicks are in heaven when it rains. I mean, these are birds that spend most of their lives in the Bering Sea, in the North Pacific. They like cold, windy, wet weather. So Hawaii's pretty hot for them, and they have a down coat on. So when it rains like that, the chicks all start peeping and spreading their wings, and they're just excited as heck. They can smell the ocean, and they're just so drawn to it. So, and how do they smell where the squid is? How do they find it in 4 million square miles? Boy, isn't it a miracle? It's quite extraordinary. I saw it again today. Yes, ma'am.
I know you mentioned that there was past massacres.
I'm sorry?
I know you mentioned there was like past massacres of the birds. What
Yes.
can be done to help with that?
Thank you so much for asking that. Past massacres of the birds. Oh, thank you. That gives me an opportunity to let my dream out in this room. Fences. Fences are the biggest issue with responsible dog ownership. Kim has saw a pig kill this year. But dogs are the worst. Feral cats are bad. Feral cats are really bad for the little ones. They're left alone. They're sitting there totally defenseless. So keep your animals inside is really helpful. If you have an extra $20 million in your purse, I'm just saying, I'd love somebody to buy, no, not tonight, okay, I'm interested in somebody buying Moloa'a Bay Ranch in particular. Moloa'a Bay Ranch is 100 and something acres, I've forgotten, anyway, it's 100 something acres. It's absolutely perfect albatross habitat. There is wonderful, it's on the northeast corner of Kauai. They come in on the winds right there. They love it. It was cut down, so there's not much not many trees in the way of them, and so they fly deep into the valley and come back. What I would love to see is for someone, a visionary with $20 million extra dollars, to buy the place, fence it first, and then ultimately develop a visitation center with Hawaiian values at its core. Really honest Hawaiian values at its core. So that it feels very welcoming to local people, so that it is a place where people can come for respite, to sit and watch, and a place for children to be brought for education, and a place for visitors to come, because there's nowhere else in the world you can see this. Right? So that's what we can do. We can join me in that vision, because I believe, every miracle starts with a thought, right? Every manifestation starts with a dream. So think it with me. And then also, Mika, you have that flyer back there. There's a flyer that was distributed in on Ko'olau Road, sort of Moloa'a, Kilauea area, was distributed at the beginning of nesting season this year, asking people to please keep their dogs under control. Once the Department of Land and Natural Resources sent law enforcement officers around after 20 kills, huh, Jeannie? How many? 20?
On that one property, 18, and then we had 10.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was horrible. They were all most of them were on nests. They wouldn't leave their eggs. So anyway, they went door to door, and the dogs, we didn't see the dogs again. They think they know where they are, but it's hard to prove. I mean, hardly ever does a dog show up on a camera. We just got lucky with Kalo. So, but thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to know if you know how many nests are in Princeville now.
I don't know. Does anybody know that? I don't see Kathy here.
About 10 chicks fledged last year.
Fledged last year.
The year before was like 19.
Yeah, last year was a bit lower number, but this year.
They're coming back in strong this year.
Yeah. Do you know a number in Princeville?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Now, it's only one back.
Private lands that last year fledged, one private property I know of that fledged 21 chicks last year has 44 nests this year.
Wow.
So, then not all of them will result in a fledging chick, but the numbers will be higher. So we are seeing a gradual expanse. Now remember that we still have 0.0001% of the population of Laysan Albatross here. They're in Midway and in the French Frigate Shoals and Laysan and places like that, Kaua. But the mothership is Midway. But of course, the reason that I want for Molawa'a Bay Ranch to happen and for all this to go on Kauai is because Midway is going to go underwater. Midway's flat, and sea level rise is going to drown it. So when the Japanese tsunami happened 3 years ago, a 5-foot wave came through and took out 250,000 albatross chicks. So it's not just sea level rise, it's also the increased storms, right? We all know the weather has gotten stormier, and so we need places with elevated bluffs. On Kauai, we also have a near absence of mongoose. That's why it can't happen on Maui and the Big Island, and it can only happen on Oahu where they have a predator fence. So we have 3 things. We have elevated bluffs, we have a near absence of mongoose, and we have people who care. Those 3 things make us a Noah's Ark for these birds. So that's one of the reasons it's so important. Yes?
How early have you found that the albatross have arrived on Kauai?
The earliest?
Or the earliest?
We had a little lottery this year.
Okay.
Let's see, it was November 14th, 15th, somewhere in there. When is it earlier than that? Oh, 5th. Oh, 5th. Yeah. November, you're right. That's right. I won. I forgot. But I gave the dinner that Patrick Ching is going to cook to the second place winner. So, yeah, November 5th, but you usually don't see the couples start reuniting, second week in November. Typically you see the boys back first, and then the girls come back, and then there's a nice, wonderful, affectionate, gorgeous reunion. Lots of snuggling before and after sex.
Are they arriving earlier each year?
I don't think we can say that.
Okay.
And it varies a little bit by the year. I wrote down last year when I saw the first bird, and this was a day actually later than that. And the bird could have been there the same day as last year, but I just didn't go that day. So, and this bird, that first bird was spotted at Kilauea Point at the refuge. We got an email from Jen telling us first bird spotted. So I don't know that we.
We got one more question.
One more question.
Have to close up. Sorry, I know you have a lot of questions, but the library, usually 7:30 is our closing time.
Okay.
At least 5 minutes for the auction.
We have paid staff that need to go home. We must support them. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment. There's 68,000 people who live on Hawaii. You use $20 million. That's $300 a person.
Oh, good math.
$1 a day.
$1 a day per everybody who goes on Kauai. I like your thinking. I like that. Everybody on Kauai, $1 a day. See this pocket right here? There we go. Okay, and that's what I said. Okay. Oh, and the other thing I'm going to say is that 2/3 of the chicks that fledged last year are from private lands. So I think we should all stop thinking about the government fixing things for us in every regard. Oh, if you want to sign up to be an observer, or if you think you want to be a cam operator, Mika, in the raise your hand, Mika has a sign-up list back there, so just let us know if you want to participate. I've got a book coming out probably later this year, we hope, so we'll be in touch about that. And thanks so much for coming. Thanks for here.